Okay, so today we're doing a deep dive on something that's really important and often misunderstood, and that is high masking autism. We've all heard of autism, but high masking kind of adds like a whole other layer to it. So what exactly is high masking? Essentially, it's when people, they learn to adapt their behavior to kind of fit in, and it makes their autism less obvious. It's almost like they're a
Okay.
master of blending in, even if it takes a toll behind the scenes.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. It's about navigating a world that isn't always built for
Mhm.
or understands neurodiversity.
Exactly. And that leads us to the article that really sparked my interest. The worst things to say to high masking autistics. I mean, we all have those moments where like, I hope I don't say the wrong thing, especially with sensitive topics. But this article is not just about avoiding like faux pas. It's about really understanding the lived experiences of people who are often misunderstood. So let's dive in
Yeah,
and see what we can learn.
I'm really glad we're starting with that point
Mhm.
because I think understanding is key here. And this
Yeah.
article does a really fantastic job of highlighting how high masking is often a coping mechanism, a way to survive and function in a world that can feel very overwhelming.
And it's not a choice, right? It's not like someone wakes up one day and is like, I think I'll put on my mask today. It's
Yeah.
much more complex than that.
Absolutely. Think about it this way. Like imagine feeling like you're constantly on stage, analyzing every social cue,
Mhm.
trying to mirror behaviors to avoid standing out. The article even mentions one individual who described it as living life in constant translation. That takes immense effort and energy and emotional labor. So it's no wonder that, high masking individuals talk about experiencing burnout.
Wow, living life in constant translation. That really hits home. You really start to see how draining it would be. And it makes that phrase that the article mentions, you don't seem autistic, all the more problematic. I know I've probably even thought something similar in the past, not realizing how invalidating it can be.
Yeah. It's a really common reaction, unfortunately.
Hmm.
And often it stems from a very limited understanding of the autism spectrum.
Right.
People kind of picture a certain set of behaviors, and if they don't see those, then they assume autism isn't present. But the reality is that autism is a spectrum for a reason. There's such a wide range of experiences and ways that it can manifest.
Yeah, it's like saying, oh, you don't use a wheelchair, so you can't possibly have mobility issues. I mean, there are so many ways that people adapt and cope.
Exactly. And those adaptations are often invisible to others, which I think this article does a great job of bringing to light.
It really does. And one of the ways it does that is by highlighting phrases that, while seemingly harmless on the surface, can actually be incredibly hurtful to those who are high masking. And this is where things got really interesting for me. For instance, just be yourself. It seems like such a positive, encouraging thing to say, right? But I have a feeling there's a lot more to unpack there.
You're spot on. And that's where I think, understanding the lived experience of high masking is so crucial.
Mm.
What might seem like simple, well-intentioned advice
Hmm.
can actually be incredibly loaded for someone who spent years carefully constructing a persona to navigate the world safely. It's almost like saying to someone who has really bad social anxiety, just be yourself when you go to that party. And it's
Yeah.
like,
Mm.
it's crowded
Yeah.
and it's loud. It's really not that different for someone who is high masking. They have these coping mechanisms for a reason.
That's such a good point. I mean, we would never tell someone with a physical injury to just ignore it. So why is it that sometimes we do that with these invisible struggles?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just about those kind of like outward social situations. The article also mentions phrases like, why can't you just relax? Or
Mhm.
you're being too sensitive.
Hmm.
And for someone who might be experiencing sensory overload,
Right.
which is, when your senses are just bombarded with more information than your brain can really process comfortably, those statements can be so dismissive,
Yeah.
you know?
Like telling someone who's overwhelmed by this like symphony of noise and bright lights to just chill out and enjoy the concert.
Exactly. It's so essential to remember that everyone experiences the world so differently. And what might seem like a minor inconvenience to one person could be a major obstacle for another.
And that makes me think of another phrase from the article. You just need to try harder.
Yeah.
It's easy to fall into that trap of thinking, oh, if you just try harder, you'll be successful. But it's not always that simple, right?
You're so right. It's like telling someone with dyslexia to just focus harder when they're trying to read. It completely discounts their lived experience and puts all of this pressure on them to conform to neurotypical standards.
And then there's the phrase that I think really takes the cake. For minimizing someone's experience, it's not that big of a deal. Oh my gosh. Talk about invalidating someone's feelings.
Yeah,
Right?
talk about invalidating someone.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like the classic example of, judging someone's internal experience.
Mhm.
based on our very limited external perceptions. Like, we can't possibly know what someone else is going through. And I think that's why it's so crucial to approach any struggles that someone shares with us with empathy and validation.
Absolutely. So we've talked a lot about what not to say, which I think is so important for raising awareness. But what about the flip side? How can we move from simply avoiding these hurtful phrases to actively offering support? The article does have some alternatives, right?
It does. And this is where I think the conversation gets really empowering. Instead of offering unsolicited advice or minimizing their experience,
Hmm.
we can actually shift to phrases that validate their feelings
Yeah.
and offer genuine support.
So, like, instead of just be yourself, what are some things we should say?
Well, the article suggests some really simple but powerful alternatives. Like, instead of that, you could say, I'm here for you if you want to talk,
Hmm.
or your feelings are valid. It's about acknowledging their struggle without trying to like fix it or minimize it.
Yeah.
You know,
Those phrases really resonate with me because it's almost like shifting the focus from giving advice to just showing genuine empathy and support, just making space for someone to share their experiences without judgment.
exactly. And honestly, sometimes the most helpful thing we can do is just listen, with an open mind and heart. The article also highlights the importance of asking things like, how can I support you better?
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, because that question really shows that you're invested in understanding their individual needs and willing to adjust your own behavior to create a more inclusive environment.
That's such a powerful reminder that support looks different for everyone. It's
Yeah.
not a one-size-fits-all approach. This whole deep dive has been so eye-opening, but it makes you wonder, why should this matter to the average person? Like, even if you don't personally know someone who's autistic or high masking, why is this important?
Oh my gosh, that's such an important question. And I think at its core, it's about cultivating empathy and understanding in a world that, can often feel really divisive. Just because we may not share the same struggles as someone else
Hmm.
doesn't mean that their experiences are any less valid.
Totally. It's like that saying, right? Everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind.
Exactly. By
Yeah.
learning about, high masking autism and other neurodivergent experiences, we can challenge our own assumptions
Hmm.
and expand our understanding of the human experience. And we become more compassionate individuals. And I think that compassion really ripples out into the world around us.
I love that. Well, as we wrap up this deep dive on high masking autism, it really does leave you with something to think about. Could someone in your life be silently navigating a world that doesn't fully understand them? And how could this new awareness change your interactions, even in small ways? Just something to ponder. Thanks for joining us on this journey of discovery. Until next time.